This is your World War III update. The Canadian dollar is currently sinking like a stone. It is crashing. The great North American trade war has officially begun. And on cue, like the misguided sheep we are, we go full-blown tribalistic on one another. When the elites say jump, we jump, don't we? Internecine conflict abound between our American and Canadian brothers and sisters. And why, oh why, is all of this happening? Why have we gone full-blown tribal on one another, booing each other's national anthems, suddenly, like flipping a switch? Last week, I didn't get the memo that there was some festering tensions and latent animosity between Americans and Canadians. But lo and behold, here we are a week later, we're practically at war. This is crazy, guys. Most people have the faintest idea as to why this is happening. I'm going to dispel all of the misinformation today. Stick with me because you're going to get a power punch of information, I assure you. There's an age-old saying, when goods stop crossing borders, armies will. Now, you might think I'm referring to the Canadian and American border. No. I'm talking about the Chinese and American border. I'm talking about the Russian and European border, the Iranian and surrounding regions borders. I'm talking about the North Korean and the South Korean border. That's the border that armies will flow across as a result of the suspension of the global supply chain. This is what is happening right now. The reason why the smart people in Canada are stocking up on ammunition and guns because the Liberals today just already have a law, surprisingly, ready to go to tax the hell out of that shit when it comes across the border. The reason why the Americans who are smart are stocking up on toilet paper because they've realized that 90% of the ass wipe comes from the Great Canadian Boreal Forest. It all has to do with the broader geopolitical picture. This is macroeconomics. If you think for a second that the elites in the United States give two steaming, flaming bags of shit about the derelict, fentanyl-addicted communities of the inner urban cities in North America, then, my friends, you're delusional. If you think for a second multi-billion-dollar trade deals are at all concerned about the fate of drug addicts. I got bridges to sell. There's people who actually believe that shit. Can you believe it? Oh, we got to save all the poor people from drugs. That's why. Listen. This is much bigger than that. That's the excuse to get around the legalities of the United States, Mexican, and Canadian Trade Agreement, the USMCA. You see, that's the force majeure way out of the contract to say that there's a border security issue, so we got to impose tariffs. That's all that is. They don't give a flying, steaming bag of hot crap about the poor people, much less the ones who are on drugs. Okay? Then you got to ask yourself, why the hell does the Chinese not have a problem with fentanyl? Did you ever think of that? Maybe our culture is screwed? Why do the Chinese ban TikTok? Okay? You know, maybe our culture is just messed up. And maybe it's our fault. And it's our responsibility to police our own borders. Regardless, the real purpose here is this. I'm going to give you the bird's eye view that nobody else is. 30 years ago, the Cold War ended. Okay? People came together around the world. Back then, the population was about 5 billion people. The world came together in an interlocking global supply chain of interdependence. And we all enjoyed the fruits and the spoils of that arrangement, where efficiency and international shipping and planned obsolescence brought us all kinds of cheap crap, and good old slave labor was basically the crux of it all, right? We indulged in the slave labor of the Chinese and the sweatshops. That's what we traded in our own industrial sovereignty for. People forget. People are mad now because, oh, we can't compete with the Chinese. Yeah, that's because you want cheap shit. Okay? That's why. It's your fault. It's our fault. People who went to Walmart for all these years, instead of demanding high quality products made here, it's our fault. It's not other people's fault. It's your own damn fault. Now, $36 trillion in debt. Suddenly, we got to find somebody else to blame, right? Listen, here's what happened. The Cold War ended. The peace dividend, which is something they use to refer to the fact that you no longer have to spend money on the military. Okay? So you can take all that money that you spent on military expenditures and move it into building out infrastructure, building stuff, creating fun things for people to do and consume. And that's what we did for about 30 years until 2020 hit. That was the end. That was the beginning of the end. That was the beginning of deglobalization. That was when the decoupling began. And the trade started to slow, and correspondingly, the armies started to move across borders. Once again, now why did it happen? It's simple. It really is simple. There's more people. They're consuming a lot more stuff, and stuff is running out. Now, yes, the population growth is slowing, but the consumption is not. Do you realize that 6 to 7 billion people on this planet only consume a small fraction of the energy that you do, and they want to come up, okay? That is why we at once were like this. We came together. We worked together. There was money in coming together, okay? Now we're receding into our shells, and we're battening down the hatches because shit is getting scarce. Things are getting tight around the world. And now we all have to go into an isolationist and protectionist mode because nobody trusts anybody anymore because stuff is running out. That's the simplest way to explain what's going on right now. Shit is not as easy to come by as it used to be. Shit's getting more expensive. There's more and more people. They want more and more stuff. Okay? Now, fortunately, the onshoring is being aided by automation because, of course, we don't have to rely on slave labor anymore to do all the menial jobs. So in a timely fashion, technology has bailed us out and is likely going to usher in a new age of automation, which if the Americans and Canadians and everybody else for that matter, who's now going to be in Mad Max, it's going to be Mad Max on a nation state level. That's where we're heading, okay? With the exception of some BRICS nations who appears to still be interested in opening their borders and enhancing trade with one another. We are taking a different approach. Now, the end game of all of this is the consolidation of the Americas to fight against the Chinese. Thucydides' trap is something I often reference, and it's the idea that if you know that there is a rising power who will threaten you someday, you take them out, right? You take them out when they're still weak enough to be taken out. And that is what the U.S. is attempting to do at this point in time with all of these tariffs, with the Taiwanese semiconductor situation where they're trying to impose 100% tariffs on the Taiwanese if they don't onshore all of their production of their highest end chips, which they're already beginning to in Arizona. If they don't accelerate that process, tariffing the Chinese, tariffing the European Union, tariffing Mexico, Panama, Canada, it's all because things are running out and they're getting ready for war. It's all about World War III. Greenland, it's all about World War III. Nothing to do with resources. They have no capability at this point in time, at least not for the foreseeable future, to access and exploit all the resources in and around Greenland. They just simply don't. They're actually already getting ready to deploy more troops. That's what it's about. It's about deploying troops, okay? It's about Russia. It's about China. It's about World War III. Mark Rutte, today, the head of NATO, said that we need to prepare for war. And he's not messing around. They need to prepare for war. That's what this is. It's a slow burn process. It doesn't happen like it does in the movies, but that's what's going on. The United States is $36 trillion in debt. They got the bright idea to try to consolidate the Americas, bring on another 40 million and offload some of that debt onto us, because that's what it would be if we became the 51st state. We would take on their debt burden. That's why immigration's even a thing. With all these countries that are in debt, people just think, oh, the immigrants are coming over and they're a drag on the system. To a certain extent, maybe in the first generation, maybe even the second. But in the long term, they're debt collateral because you ain't having babies, okay? And in order to borrow more money from whoever the lenders are, let's not go there. That's a taboo topic, isn't it? Well, you need debt collateral. You need something to put up against it. Too much counterparty risk. If there isn't anybody on the other side, if people ain't having babies, who the hell wants to lend you money? How are you going to pay it back if your country's in debt? It's part of the issue that Japan is going to face right away because they're aging and there's not enough people who are going to be able to service the debts there in the future. So this is what's going down. In a nutshell, we have to try to interdict the progress of the rising superpowers of the world. And in doing so, we're going to cannibalize ourselves. We're going to try to consolidate in an attempt to ultimately erase all trade barriers in the North American continent, which some people might appreciate. But this idea, this silly notion that is getting floated around, that is a talking point I don't even want to piss on. It's this idea of, oh, we have to save all the drug addicts and blah, 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 blah. They don't give a frack. They don't give a frack. You know what a frack is? I don't. But they don't give one for a drug addict, okay? The Chinese, they don't got drug problems like we do. Why? Because their culture isn't messed up, okay? So all of these attempts right now, this is desperation, is what this is. The United States is currently repatriating 15 times the amount of gold as is normal from the London Exchange right now. It's really looking like they are battening down the hatches. And the connection between Canada and London is fairly significant. If you didn't know, we are considered a constitutional monarchy, whatever the frick that is. We think we're sovereign, but we still have this person called the Governor General, who's supposed to be some symbolic figurehead of Canada, who's chosen by the King of England. And, apparently, oh yeah, don't worry, we're free and sovereign, even though the king's on all our coins still, and it's right in our faces. But legally, nobody really knows. This is a shot across the bow, I think, to London. They're getting all their gold back from there. The United States is bringing back all of their gold from London because they know the shit's going to hit the fan. Okay? Right now, anybody who's smart with half a brain is loading up on ammunition in Canada because the Liberals already have a plan ready to go to tax the hell out of firearms and ammunition. And all the stuff at CanadianPreparedness.com, it's likely going to go up in price. Okay? Big time, 25%, because we can't, when we import that stuff, when the countermeasures and retaliatory tariffs go into play with the Trudeau's plan, we are going to be paying a lot more for that stuff to bring it across the border. And the same is true for Americans, many of which are in the dark with respect to the true purpose of tariffs. Most don't seem to realize how they work. In fact, most Canadians, or Americans for that matter, they don't know how tariffs work. So when the United States says they're imposing tariffs on Canada, all that means is that you pay more for the stuff that Canada sends. It's actually a tax on you, in a sense, with the hope that the exporter from Canada is going to drop their pants a bit because they need the sale to the United States. Well, that presumes that the person buying on the other end is not willing to pay, okay, and that they're willing to get it cheaper elsewhere. But the question is, from where? It's really a question of, is there an alternative place to go and get stuff from? If there is no alternative place to go and buy 90% of your asswipe from, guess what? You're paying 25% more for it from Canada, okay? The same holds true with any one of the resources and raw materials that we send down your way. So the idea that this is just going to affect Canadians is wholly misguided. And yes, in Canada, unless they make some exceptions for food, which I suspect they probably will have to, we're going to be paying a lot more for a lot of things. Okay, it's a $1 trillion trade relationship. The actual deficit is something to the tune of $40 billion. In the grand scheme of things, that is negligible, considering that a lot of the stuff we send down there is heavily discounted anyways. But I don't want to get into the technicals, because what's the point? You know, I mean, everybody is just basing their opinion. Everybody's a tariff expert now. You really have to dig into this stuff to understand what's going on. But you can get lost in the weeds of it all. And what they really want right now is for Americans and Canadians to be engaged in this internecine conflict. And I call it that because I do believe we're blood, we're family. Americans, Canadians, for the most part, we share the same historical struggle for the most part. You know, the frontier in the West was pretty much the same as it was up here, only it was a bunch of French guys in a canoe. Okay, it's a little bit different, but more or less the same, just a little bit colder and more bugs and other nasty things. So that's what's going on. Okay, my friends. It's very easy, even myself, understanding this big picture and this big grand ploy to have us fighting over fentanyl. Nobody gives a shit, man. Stop pretending you give a shit. Okay? Nobody cares. It's sad to say, but nobody truly cares. Did they care about crack? No. Did they care about meth? No. Do they care about fentanyl? No. They don't care. They simply don't care. It's a cultural thing. It's Band-Aid solutions. You know, as if, you know, getting at the underlying reasons, why are people so heavily drug addicted in our society, is the question we need to ask. I'm not being insensitive to that. Why? Why are people feeling the need to get on psychiatric medications? Why are 1 in 3 people hopped up on that stuff? It's because our culture is messed up. Our civilization is dying, and all we know how to do is eat our own at this point. It's cannibalizing. That's what this is. This is collapse cannibalism of a nation-state sort, where the United States, and not the United States people, when I say that, I'm talking about the oligarchs in charge, have no other solution but to react with attempts to imperialize their neighbors. Because what else is there to do? And then, of course, you have the AI race on top of all of this, which throws in another wild card variable into the equation. But a lot of this boils down to, it's the USMCA agreement, which was the agreement that came about after NAFTA, in which all countries agreed that tariffs could not be imposed. It's a lot more complicated than that, but that's the simplest way of explaining it. And they need to have a border security issue, a threat, at least a perceived one anyways, because really the border threat from Canada is far less than what it is from Mexico. And not only that, it's impossible to police the border, and the border policing is half the responsibility of the Americans anyways. So it has nothing to do with that. That's just an excuse to be able to impose tariffs, okay? Greenland is currently having informal discussions with NATO to prepare for a proposal by Trump involving a major troop deployment in the Arctic. Unnamed sources told DPA on Friday the goal is to ease tensions between the U.S., Denmark, and Greenland. It's all about troops. It has nothing to do with resources. A new bill will make it a crime to download DeepSeek in the U.S., punishable by up to 20 years in prison. This is it. This is battening down the hatches. Remember, if you don't take anything from this video, take this. When goods stop coming across the borders, armies will. Period, point blank. That's all this is. Netanyahu is about to meet with Trump for an extremely important meeting. Apparently, they're expected to discuss potential military action versus Iran, says defense analyst Ron Ben Yeshai. U.S. and Israel would likely agree to launch a joint assault into Iran if they start to build nuclear warheads. And many people say that the war with Iran can start within weeks. Iran has been doing a lot of posturing. It appears as though they're getting intelligence that suggests that the Israelis and the Americans are getting ready to do something. Pax Gold, which is a cryptocurrency that's backed by physical gold, it's a stable coin that was created by Paxos Standard in September of 2019. That gold price, as reflected in Pax Gold, which is kind of the barometer for what it might look like when markets open, although the market cap of it is only something to the effect of 540 million, so it's not that substantial. However, it does seem to more or less accurately track the price of gold. And because gold doesn't trade on weekends, it's about to open up here. By the time this video is released, we'll know if this is true or not. But the price of gold was trading at $2,900. Okay, so that means $100 over what it was on the close on Friday. So we'll see if there's any truth to that. I have a feeling that as a result of these tariffs, the markets are going to get spooked. We're going to see a lot of volatility this week. This could very well crash the markets. But the thing is, MAGA has the ideological base, and they've outspokenly said so now, that they're ready to endure some pain as a result of it. Now, inflation has been pretty shitty, so I'm not sure the wealthy people are saying that, like the wealthy influencers online are saying that, but I'm not so sure about MAGA themselves, like the bulk of the population, the working class population. I don't know if they're ready to endure the misery of the next few years of austerity and what that could truly look like, especially if the trade war ramps up. Because now Trump is saying that in response, or if he said this prior to Trudeau's announcement last night about the counter tariff measures being imposed, which are going to jack the price of everything, including food, that if Trudeau went through with it, that he would actually double the tariffs. Okay, so this is a very escalatory trade war. So we could, in fact, see 50% tariffs on Canadian goods, $160 billion of goods. I know we've become desensitized to these numbers, but that's a lot of stuff, okay? We got tariffs coming on rifles, shotguns, handguns, which we can't even get anymore, muzzle loaders, and ammo. I want to get a muzzle loader, you know, just in case, if things go really Mad Max. 25% surtax on all guns and ammo imported from the USA starting February 4th. The only incorruptible thing you have at your disposal is gold and silver, no counterparty risk, and stuff. You know, for all my Christian friends, sometimes as an agnostic, I think about the path that my life has taken, and I realize that I was able to get in. I was able to get out to the homestead before this shit hit the fan. Something was pulling me in that direction. Maybe it was your boy. Maybe it was your boy, J-Rock, Jesus himself. Maybe he was pulling me in that direction. I know there's somebody behind the screen right now saying, "It's about time." I get letters and messages and books all the time from people proselytizing to me and wanting to bring me into the fold. But it's times like these when I realize, I sit back and say, well, at least I made it before the shit hit the fan. I've been warning people. I told you there was going to be a pandemic. There was a pandemic. I told you years before that was going to happen. That was going to happen. I told you there was going to be riots before there was riots. I told you there was going to be a war before there's a war. I mean, all of my predictions are vindicated on a long enough timeline. People say, oh, you predicted this. No, you didn't watch the damn video. You didn't watch it down. You read the headlines. You read the title. You didn't watch the video. You're dumb. Okay, that's all there is to it. And that's like 1% of people, that one squeaky wheel that sits there, looking for some grease. You know who you are. Marco Rubio is he presented an ultimatum to the president of Panama regarding the Panama Canal. Absent immediate changes regarding Chinese influence, the U.S. will take measures necessary to protect its rights under the treaty. Everything is about China. They're trying to say that the liberals are controlled by the Chinese in this country, and they're talking about millions of dollars. That's not the kind of thing that's measured in millions of dollars, okay? No. Yeah, the Chinese have a lot of influence, especially in the West, but in terms of them controlling the Canadian government, I mean, let's get real. Xi Jinping's not on our coin. I mean, sometimes you just got to step back and say, okay, like, this is kind of silly, which is what it is. And does that just fuel the whole xenophobic, or xenophobic, I should say, agenda, which is all of this? TikTok, DeepSeek, fentanyl, chips, the chip war ongoing. Anyways, guys, I just wanted to give you that update. The trade war has begun. It's going to get worse. Go up and stock up. I don't even know if I got time to get to the gun store today, but I'm going there tomorrow morning. I'm loading up on ammo because it's going to get a lot more expensive, and everything from freeze dryers to I mean, just all the stuff that we carry, body armor, just everything, the thousands of products that we carry, it's all going to go up in price. Likely 25%, 25%. And the dollar is worth less than it was before. We're almost at $1.50 Canadian to every American dollar. This is why it's good to have alternative currencies. If you are a prepper, have actual physical alternative currencies. The Forex arbitrage is going to be insane for the next few weeks. It is going to be off the hook. So maybe you want to make some moves in that respect, but that's all I got for you. The guns are about to cross the borders because the goods, they ain't. Thanks for watching. And if you want to support the channel, CanadianPreparedness.com. Take care.